Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the 68th episode of the Inbox, starting off with a question from Adrian Miller, saying, okay, so if the Constellation is the largest they can fit through a small jump point, and the Retribution, Class Dreadnought, or even the Bengal, are they going to fit through the large jump point? Is it going to be that they just can't and they have to quantum travel everywhere, or is the large jumping the most stable so they can fit an expanding size of ships? Also, I hope there's going to be more information on the jump point than just small, medium, and large. I'm looking forward to a lot more information on jump points as well, and I think there's some clarification that we need on what can fit through what points, because it's gone back and forth a lot of times, but mostly that's focused on what can fit in the small size. Where we stand on the smallest jump point is really, it's either a freelancer can fit through it or a freelancer cannot fit through it. Constellation's not even in the question. So Akani's not going to be able to fit through the smallest jump point. It's going to have to use medium and large. So you're really focused more on freelancer and below. I'm still of the mind, based on CIG's initial saying, that the freelancer is going to be the biggest ship to fit through the small jump point. And some of that's based on my own personal kind of value evaluation of the ship and where it needs to be able to have some of that additional flexibility as opposed to something like the Constellation. But getting more to the real point of your question, is the Bengal, the Dreadnought, the Pegasus, the biggest ships, are they going to be able to fit through the large jump points? I think yes, because I haven't seen anything that's going to kind of explain anything otherwise. Quantum travel is only so good, and you're not going to be able to quantum travel between systems. Quantum traveling in a system is going to take a long time in some situations. So if you're talking about going from Terra to Sol, you're not going to quantum travel that. You're going to have people dying on the journey. So you have to be able to use the jump points. The only exception there would be, if they decided to take a page out of like Elite Dangerous's book, where they end up having something called witch space, which kind of, I think, is like a subsection of hyperspace, where the ship actually kind of opens up this weird gravity portal it can go. It's not your traditional jump points or your ability to jump between systems. It's a different level. So they could come out and say that the capital ships end up having a different type of capability, but I don't think that's the case. I haven't seen anything to make me think that's going to happen, so I think what we're going to see is that the largest jump points are just so massive that anything can fit through them. Hull E, Retribution, Bengal, it doesn't matter. Any ship that we have in the game should be able to fit through there. Sir Dauphin says, what's the best ship for exploration and maybe mercenary work for two people? Thanks for the vids, man. They are great. Thank you. That's a good question. I'm kind of the mind that a Cutlass might be an interesting option for this, especially the Cutlass Black, because we've seen some information about them having energy efficient or low output engines, and that kind of, in my mind, equates to some extent to being fuel efficient, and then that kind of equates to the ability to go longer ranges. And you talk about the Cutlass as a ship, and there's a lot of different hard points and customization that you can do, and with that in mind, I think you could probably equip the Cutlass into a pretty good option for exploration. And with the rework, it's getting bigger, bulkier, stronger, more weapons, so from that perspective, I think it could also be a good mercenary ship. The other one that I would put in that category is probably like the Freelancer Miss. The Freelancer Miss is it's kind of the cargo hauler that's been turned into a missile boat. So with that in mind, it's a scary target. You've got a lot of things that are going well for it. It's got big weapons, big shields, it's got a lot of missiles and the reloading system. So I think the Freelancer Miss is a good option from a mercenary stance. As far as exploration goes, the trade-off with the Miss is that you give up the cargo ability of the Freelancer. Now, the Freelancer does have an exploration variant being the Dur, so I think what you could probably start talking about is taking some of those components that you would put on a Dur and putting them on a Miss, and you can kind of customize the ship into an exploration version of the ship. So I think those are the two that probably stand out for me. I like both of the ships a lot, and I think based on what you want to do, I think they're kind of a natural fit. Bangura X says, can you answer this question? Why were the HUDs in the ships changed? Before you could see more detailed holographic information on your ship's glass console, as well as ship information and enemy ship information. Why did the devs downgrade this feature, and will it be coming back? I don't think this was a deliberate downgrade. I think this was a bug that kind of came in, and they were trying to figure out how to implement it, and that was going alongside some ongoing display changes that they were making. So what happened was, and this comment's a couple months old, a lot of what happened was the the displays ended up kind of just breaking, and you lost your visor HUD. And your visor HUD is typically what you're used to seeing the most information displayed on. And ideally, what you have in your ship is you have your visor, which is your heads-up display, and then you have your MFDs, or your multifunction displays, on your ship. So if you think about when you're sitting in the cockpit of a Hornet, you've got all these little screens that are dotted around there. Those are going to be things that you can interact with. And you could do a little bit of that today, but they're currently working on that system, and we've seen some little teases about it in Around the Verse and Happy Hours and a couple of those other shows that they do. So we know that they're getting some love, and I think they're making some pretty good progress. But the problem is when you lose your visor and the MFDs don't really do anything for you at the moment, that's when you kind of get that feeling like you had the downgrade. So it's kind of a bug, as well as kind of laying into that just development cycle that we're in. But I think things are back a little bit better where we stand today in 2.6.2. So I think we're in a better place. But we're not really going to be really ready to go until those MFDs are working as they should. Gamel says, "Hey STL, I always watching your videos, good stuff, keep it up. Now I wonder about the Vanduul Glaive. What are your thoughts on it? Does it hold up? Is it fun? I want to be a pirate and I'm thinking about having this as my main. I also own a GN Scout and a Scaber. How do these compare to the Glaive?" Sorry for a long question. No worries. So as far as the Glaive goes, I like the Glaive. There's some very mixed opinions out there about the ship. I think it's too expensive for what it is, but that's kind of just the going price for Asperia's, remakes and remodels. I think it's fun to fly. I think when those size 5s actually land shots, they do a ton of damage. I think it's unique. I think it's different. So the ship itself I like. As far as the overall ability, it's not super durable. Its flight mechanics are just kind of okay. I like the way it flies, but there's something about it that just feels a little off. And outside of the size 5s, the other weapons on it are just kind of okay as well. So could you spend your money elsewhere and get a better bang for your buck? Absolutely. Now, as far as the ships that you mentioned, you say you want to be a pirate and you want to use this as your main. All 3 of the ships that you mentioned don't have cargo. So you're talking about a Glaive, which is you in a cockpit. You have a GN Scout, which is you in a cockpit. And you have the Glaive, or the Saber, which is you in a cockpit. So the only type of piracy that you can really do with those ships is actually rolling up, blowing somebody out of the water, and then, or disabling their ship and then taking their ship, but then you're leaving your ship behind. So you don't have any 2-person ships where you could steal a ship without leaving one behind. You don't have any cargo space where you could actually get away with the goods. So unless you're working in pairs, which you should be doing in piracy anyways, unless you have somebody else that's actually there to carry the cargo, you're kind of not going to do very well as a pirate. With the ships that you listed, I can only assume that you're actually talking about being a marauder, which means you're just going to go out and kill people. So unless you've got a more developed game plan there, you kind of got to reevaluate what you're going to do with those ships. Ken Dring says, "Hey Youngblood, I love the series. Are they going to be mini cities on habitable planets or just 1 to 4? It really just depends. If you're talking about a city or a planet like ArcCorp, the entire city's a planet. It's kind of like Coruscant and Star Wars. So I think you're going to have city planets. I think you're going to have planets and moons where there ain't nothing there. And then you're going to have other places where there's maybe just little outposts, or maybe we have 3 to 4 cities. When we talk about the lore, a lot of times they mention, a couple cities here or there. Based on how spread out human civilization is in this universe that we're talking about, I'm kind of expecting to see 1, 2, 3 big cities on major planets, but I'm expecting there to be a lot more uninhabited locations than actually habitable places. And some of that's going to be based on the green band that the system has and where the planets are and how long that planet has been inhabited. So there's a lot of things that are going to go into it, but I think most situations you're going to have 1 to 4 kind of real city-like locations on planets, maybe lots more tiny little outposts, almost like rural areas, if you will. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be like, Earth, where you've got, thousands of big cities on the planet. Paradox Alpha says, "Hey Youngblood, keep up the great content. I will try. Has there been any talk on a strict prison ship or a possible module for the Caterpillar or Argo that has imprisoning capabilities? And is there a way to make money doing this?" Well, we have a little bit of that today. The Avenger Stalker has the holding cells on it. The Cutlass Blue has the holding cells on it. Some of the capital ships have brigs on board, but there's nothing that's really a strict prison ship. I think what's going to really serve that purpose in the game is going to be more focused on, You capture somebody, put them in a holding cell, or just hold them at gunpoint. Take them to a prison, or just like a holding facility, like a security Port Correa, some sort of security location where you drop them off. I think that's more along the lines of what you're going to see. So we have the holding cells in game, so I think if you're talking about just overall customization, you should be able to take that and put it into a ship like the Caterpillar. I don't think you're going to necessarily have a full-blown Caterpillar prison module, at least initially. You might end up getting one down the road. I haven't heard anything about it, which makes me say down the road, where you end up having a module that just has, 6 or 7 or 8 holding cells in it. But I think that's more along the lines of what you're going to see. It's more of a mobile jail as opposed to a long-term prison. As far as making money, if you're talking about bounty hunting, there absolutely is money in doing that. As far as actually having a prison, I don't know. It's not a game mechanic, so it's hard to talk to. And our last 2 questions are patron questions, starting off with one from Rockseeker. It's a well-known fact that there will be plenty of NPCs in the verse, but has CIG ever mentioned anything about robots? So Roberts doesn't like the idea of like androids and cyborgs and stuff. So in that regard, there's not going to be that sort of like artificial intelligence, smart like android walking around like Data from Star Trek. That's not going to happen. What we do see in the game is like certain levels of robots, like, in Dumper's Depot, there's the kind of robots that are sitting there disassembling a ship. When you start talking about, drones, you land at Cryastro and the drones pop out and start fixing your ship. Some ships like the Carrack and the, Reclaimer, and I think the Orion have drones as well. I think the Crucible does too. Those are going to be types of robots. So if you're thinking more along the lines of artificial intelligence, that's not coming. But if you're thinking along the lines of robots that can kind of help you and maybe or maybe not under player control, that's going to be in the game. And then the last one is sketchy. He said, if ballistics go through shields, why don't missiles or torpedoes? And I think this is primarily in regards to size and speed. A ballistics round is maybe on the large size, the size of your fist. A missile is the size of your body. So if you're talking about, a ballistics round, which also goes faster than a missile in a lot of situations, it's got a smaller cross-section and it's going faster. It's probably able to push through that shield a little bit better. The larger surface area of the missile is probably hitting the shield and then is causing the shield to disassemble it at that point. The other part of that is the missile is set to detonate when it hits contact, right? So if you're talking about a bullet's a dumb projectile. It just gets shot and goes until something stops it. A missile, on the other hand, is flying, and once it makes contact, it's going to sit there and it's going to say, okay, I need to detonate my charge at this point, and boom, it goes off. So when your missile hits a shield, it's made contact and it's exploding. So I think that's kind of the distinction there. There's a couple different reasons for that. We may see some different changes with torpedoes as they get implemented. Like maybe they travel slow enough where they don't impact, or maybe there's different types of missiles that are smart enough to penetrate through. But at this point, I think those are the explanations that I use personally to kind of justify things like that. So thank you guys for watching. If you have questions for the show, get them in. Otherwise, stay tuned for more coming soon, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.